They filled your ears with the promise that rigid control over your habits would shape your legacy, that rising before the sun, powering through discomfort, and checking boxes on a list no matter your mood was the hidden formula to ascend. They said discipline would open doors, that eventually your consistency would carve a path others couldn't ignore, and for a while, you believed them. You programmed your days like clockwork. You killed your hesitation with repetition. You turned self-denial into a badge of honor. You called it commitment. You called it willpower. But someone else, someone far more dangerous, would call it by another name. To a mind trained in power, this isn't strength, it's submission. You've chained yourself to a schedule crafted not for control but for compliance, because that's the truth no one dares to whisper. Discipline makes you easy to calculate, and if you're easy to predict, you're easy to corner. In a world ruled by those who change shape without warning, your predictability is your downfall. Control isn't found in routine. Control lives in the capacity to abandon the script when the moment demands it. You want to be feared? You want to become untouchable? Then forget about being the most disciplined man in the room. Start thinking like a strategist. A real player doesn't worship consistency. He uses it when it suits him. Then he drops it the moment it no longer delivers advantage. Discipline is a virtue only when you are the architect of the game. When you're not, it becomes a muzzle disguised as ambition. Most people aren't writing their own rulebook. They're stuck inside a loop handed down by authors, influencers, so-called mentors, all of whom profit from your obedience. They rise before dawn, not because it sharpens them, but because someone with a bestseller told them that's what success looks like. They grind endlessly on tasks that drain them, not because those tasks create influence or command, but because they've been taught to finish what they start. They cling to behaviors like sacred rituals, never stepping back to ask if those patterns still push the mission forward. That's not wisdom. That's servitude painted to look noble. Imagine a different archetype. Someone who sees patterns as options, not obligations. This kind of man does not drag himself out of bed at the same hour every morning, just to prove a point. He wakes when the timing makes sense. He rests when it amplifies clarity. He sprints when momentum is on his side. He goes still when silence gives him cover. His power comes not from discipline but from precision. His schedule bends around his mission, not the other way around. He isn't addicted to routine. He's married to results. He is fluid, agile, hard to anticipate, because that's the edge. When your enemies can't read you, they can't trap you. Discipline etched into your identity makes you easy to decode. And once someone knows your next move, they don't need to outfight you. They just need to wait for you to follow your own pattern into checkmate. The dangerous man doesn't measure pride by how tightly he clings to structure. He takes pride in how easily he can dismantle it. He's not shackled to a specific rhythm. He alters it without hesitation. One day, he's relentless. The next, he's vanished. Not out of indecision, but out of control. That is what real command looks like. The man who truly understands this game doesn't obsess over habit. He controls three things: when to strike, when to hold, and when to vanish. He doesn't announce his shifts. He doesn't justify them. He knows the power of moving unpredictably, and if discipline once served him, he thanks it and discards it the moment it becomes a liability, because that's what no one tells you. Discipline, if left unchecked, becomes a form of voluntary blindness. It keeps your head down. It keeps your questions quiet. You keep following the routine, not because it's working, but because it's what you've always done. You confuse movement with progress. You believe motion is meaning. But repeating the wrong path doesn't lead to mastery. It leads to exhaustion. This isn't evolution. It's slow, quiet failure wrapped in motivational slogans. The systems we're taught to trust reward those who endure, but not those who outsmart. Anyone can push through. But it takes a certain level of cold intelligence to pivot early, to abandon plans before they collapse, to burn a strategy mid-execution because the battlefield changed. Discipline keeps your feet moving, but only strategy tells you which direction to face. And when you force yourself to obey a plan that no longer serves you, you mute the part of your brain built for survival. Your intuition, your gut instinct, that subtle signal saying, turn here or wait, you override it. You suppress it beneath a checklist. You lose your killer edge because you're too busy trying to be a monk. But the strategist isn't trying to be virtuous. He's aiming for results. That's his religion. Every action is audited through one brutal question. Did this bring me closer to advantage? If yes, continue. If no, terminate. He doesn't romanticize the number of days he stuck with it. He doesn't care if it made him look focused. If it didn't shift the power dynamic, it dies. The illusion of virtue is perhaps the most elegant trap, and discipline, especially the kind that looks impressive on social media, is the most seductive of all, because it looks like you're growing, but you're just reinforcing the same box. That's not ascension, that's self-containment. The landscape is flooded with men who rise early, who eat clean, who read and journal and post quotes about effort. They look polished, they look efficient, but they're still invisible, still interchangeable, still running plays from someone else's book. Not because they lack drive, but because they're stuck playing the role of disciplined man, a role that makes them useful, but never irreplaceable. And that is no accident. Systems need people like that. Predictable, silent, obedient workers. Those who follow orders without ever asking whether the orders lead anywhere new. They make perfect gears in someone else's machine. They never cause trouble. They never question timing. They never say no. And that makes them weak, not because they lack ability, but because they lack rebellion. Now hold that image next to another one. The anomaly, the figure no one can quite predict. He's not married to a time block. He doesn't live and die by his planner. He responds to pressure, to signals, to moments that tilt the power scale. He sees opportunity not by checking boxes, but by observing angles. And when the opportunity shifts, he does too. He doesn't cling to rituals. He manipulates timing. He doesn't fear abandoning course. He welcomes it if it creates asymmetry. And that, above all else, is what makes him a threat. He can't be forecasted. He can't be simulated. He is in motion, but not on a track. He is a storm, not a schedule. This is what separates mere productivity from true power. Discipline earns applause, but unpredictability earns silence. A different kind of silence, the kind that fills the room when everyone's trying to figure you out. That confusion is fuel. When they can't pin you down, they give you space. They hesitate. And in power games, hesitation is blood in the water. The most revered players in history didn't win by being efficient. They won by being unreadable. Their strength wasn't in repetition, it was in disruption. They weren't obsessed with habits. They obsessed over leverage. And if you want to play at that level, it starts with questioning the system you worship. Every habit, every plan, every identity you've built around discipline must be held to fire. Ask yourself, does this still produce force? Or am I just comfortable inside the walls I built? Because that's how the trap sets in. At first, the routine is helpful. Then it becomes who you are, and soon it's your whole identity. I'm the guy who never skips. I always finish what I start. I'm known for my consistency. You think that makes you unshakable, but it makes you transparent. You've published your manual. Now they don't need to challenge you. They just need to let you follow your own script until it no longer works. And when the landscape shifts, as it always does, you'll keep running the old play, thinking your determination will carry you through. Meanwhile, someone else changed the board and passed you while you were proving your loyalty to a plan that no longer applies. But the player who sees discipline as a weapon, not a personality trait, is always ready. He doesn't cling to what made him look strong yesterday. He updates, he evolves, he vanishes from the radar, then strikes from another angle. He has no fear of change because he lives for adaptation. If a habit loses its sting, he kills it. If a path closes, he builds another. If the entire system starts to rot, he lights a match and walks away. He is feared not because of how hard he works, but because no one knows what he'll do next. And that is the most terrifying kind of power. Not muscle, not presence, but invisibility of intent. The kind of command that comes from being unreadable. Discipline is a structure, but strategy, that is an organism, alive, evolving, shifting. And the man who learns to operate like that, without hesitation, without apology, without chains, is the one who doesn't just play the game. He changes it. The man who no longer needs a routine to move is the one who has already won before the game even begins. Because while others are busy reinforcing their morning patterns, reaffirming their motivational playlists, or double-checking their to-do lists like sacred doctrine, he has already shifted into a new alignment. He wakes not to obey his schedule, but to dissect the environment. He listens not for the alarm, but for the signal, the faint tremor in the day that says, move here, push now, pull back there. While the world salutes consistency, he sharpens intuition, and while others polish discipline like a trophy, he shapes unpredictability into a blade. It's not that he's reckless, it's that his recklessness is a disguise. What looks like chaos to others is, to him, a calculated dance. Where others seek clarity and control, he finds power in motion. His rhythm is irregular by design, not because he lacks purpose, but because his purpose adapts faster than anyone else's plan can trap him. And that's the core distinction most miss. Obedience is not the same as intelligence. A well-trained dog might impress you with its ability to sit on command, but it will never build an empire. Obedience is applauded, but it is not feared. To walk the path of true dominance, you must strip yourself of any pride you've attached to routine. You must kill the part of you that finds safety in the predictable. You must burn the pages of the script you wrote to feel in control. Because until you do that, you're not operating freely, you're performing. And performance is a mask, not a weapon. The world will always cheer the man who never misses a step. But those cheers are hollow if you're marching toward a goal someone else handed you. Here's what no one will tell you. The moment your power relies on maintaining a sequence, it's no longer power, it's a dependency. If you're calm, your energy, your identity crumble the second someone interrupts your pattern. You're not strong, you're fragile. The strategic mind doesn't need external order to move. It creates internal force from fluidity. The edge isn't built in rituals, it's forged in response. The truly dangerous don't need silence to focus, don't need the gym to feel in control, don't need a checklist to feel accomplished. They operate in noise, in disorder, in moments where others hesitate, and that's why they ascend. Think about those who dominate not because of how they're seen, but because of how they control what is unseen. They don't need applause. They don't need routine. They don't need affirmation that they're doing it right. They measure outcomes, not aesthetics, and that's why they walk through doors others don't even know exist. Imagine someone who abandons a routine in the middle of a 100-day streak, not because he's bored, but because it no longer gives him firepower. That man is not weak. That man is not distracted. That man is lethal. Because he understands what most don't. Momentum is more important than memory. Staying in motion isn't about finishing what you once started. It's about pursuing what works now. And that sometimes means cutting ties with something you once called sacred. People cling to systems like lifeboats even when they're floating nowhere. They recite affirmations while drowning. They point to their effort like it's evidence of progress. But if your map is outdated, rowing harder just takes you further from your goal. It's not about effort, it's about direction. And only a strategist knows when to change course without mourning the loss of what once felt noble. Here's the quiet tragedy of those addicted to discipline. They believe they are free. They believe their control over habit is strength. But in truth, they've traded real adaptability for the illusion of progress. They don't pause to ask if their rituals still open doors. They just keep moving because movement feels safer than recalibration. They believe discipline equals growth, but they've confused repetition with evolution. And by the time they realize they're running in circles, the window of influence has closed. But not the strategist. He understands the terrain changes, and he changes with it. He knows the power in showing up late, in turning off the noise, in saying no when the world demands yes. He knows the silence before a calculated move is worth more than 1,000 consecutive days of visible effort. His strength is that no one can see his full pattern because he keeps rewriting it. Let's step into something even deeper. When you become too consistent, you begin to train not only your own mind but everyone else's into certainty. They begin to expect you. Expect your reply time, expect your presence, expect your tone, your angle, your strategy. And once they expect you, they can corner you. You become a known variable. Predictable behavior is the blueprint from which control is engineered. And if they know your blueprint, they own your fate. But if you flip the script, if you vanish when they expect you loud, if you pivot when they expect you loyal, if you sit back when they expect aggression, suddenly you are unreadable, and the unreadable cannot be stopped, because you cannot block what you cannot anticipate. You cannot kill what you cannot locate. The most terrifying presence in any game isn't the one who shows strength the loudest. It's the one whose next move is a mystery. So ask yourself, when was the last time you broke your own pattern, not out of weakness, but as a show of command? When was the last time you intentionally disrupted your rhythm, not because you were lost, but because you wanted others to lose track of your shadow? That is a test a few pass. Most will scream inside the moment a streak breaks. Most will spiral when their ritual slips. But the rare ones, the ones who win wars with quiet minds and sudden moves, they thrive in uncertainty. They can burn their system today and build another by nightfall. They are never caught, because they were never fully present in the place you thought they lived. The power is in the pivot. The strength is in the shift. The authority is in how calmly they can say, "This no longer serves me," and walk away without a funeral. No guilt. No applause needed. Just a step into what brings leverage next. And that's not inconsistency. That's evolution in real time. That's what makes them rulers of their own narrative, rather than actors in someone else's script. Here's the dark joke discipline plays. It convinces you you're building freedom, when really you're locking the doors yourself. A chain, even one made of healthy habits, is still a chain. It might be wrapped in quotes, reinforced with streak counters, and celebrated by peers, but it still drags you the same way a cage does. The only difference is you built it with pride. So what happens when the pressure mounts, when chaos hits, when the world shifts and your beloved structure collapses? The disciplined man freezes, because the ground underneath his feet was a routine, not a foundation. But the strategic man, he leans into the chaos. Not because he enjoys it, but because he trained for it. While others trained for consistency, he trained for instability. He trained to move through fire without memorized steps. He trained not to react, but to respond. That is the final level. You cannot teach this in classrooms. You cannot codify it in books. Because once you name the pattern, it begins to die. The moment something becomes a routine, it becomes an anchor. And that's why the master strategist doesn't cling to rituals. He clings to outcomes, to advantage, to sharpness, to control, not over a calendar, but over chaos. And here's what really unnerves those watching from the sidelines. He doesn't explain. He doesn't broadcast why he's changed his mind. He doesn't justify skipping the process. He doesn't apologize for killing the thing others said made him admirable. Because his loyalty is not to the discipline. His loyalty is to the outcome, to the shift in influence, to the tilt in leverage. And when that moment comes, he moves. You've seen this before in history. The kings who vanished for years and returned with an army. The rebels who abandoned the protocol and triggered a revolution. The minds who stepped off the path, disappeared from structure, and re-emerged with power dripping from their silence. That wasn't magic. That wasn't madness. That was control. And the only way you tap into that level is to let go of the identity that says, I am my routine. You are not. You are your decisions. You are your pivots. You are the spaces between movements where your next act is still unknown. So what now? You don't need to destroy your entire process, but you must question every piece of it, not with fear, with clarity. Ask yourself, does this action produce results today? Does this system make me sharper or just keep me busy? Can I walk away from this plan tomorrow and create something better? Because if the answer to any of those is no, you're not free. You're not in control. You're not the man shaping the game. You're just the man playing by rules that stopped serving you 5 moves ago. There's a reason the disciplined are respected, but the strategic are remembered. There's a reason consistency is praised, but flexibility is feared. And if you want to shift from performer to commander, from predictable to untouchable, from motivated to dangerous, you must let go of the illusion that discipline alone will get you there. Reputation is built on discipline, but legacy is built on decisions. And the ones that echo the loudest? Those are the decisions made not inside routines, but outside them. So the next time you feel proud of your routine, your schedule, your unbroken streak, pause, then ask, what would I do right now if I weren't tied to any of it? And do that. Because that answer, that move, is probably the one they'll never see coming. And that's exactly why you must make it.